Hello everyone. In today's case, a teenager would disappear while walking home in the middle of the night, but police would only consider her a runaway, and it would be years without answers before that status would change. 13-year-old Courtney Janelle Struble was born on November 22nd of 1990 to her mother Joy, who lived in McCown, Saskatchewan, and her father Mark, who lived in Estevan, Saskatchewan. Estevan is the 11th largest city in Saskatchewan, with a population of around 11,000 residents. It also sits just 16 kilometers north of the North Dakota-U.S. border. Courtney was said to be a fun-loving, upbeat teen that loved animals. She was always into being with her family and friends, and she was always the first one to be in the middle of it at a family function. On July 8th of 2004, Courtney was just a young teen girl who had recently graduated 9th grade and was spending the start of summer, as many teens do, hanging out with friends. At that point in time, she was in Estevan staying with her father, Mark, and that evening she had went over to a friend's house to watch movies. Around 11:30 p.m. to around midnight, which was then July 9th, it was time for Courtney to head back home. However, she would end up declining a ride home and decided to walk instead, only she would never make it back to her father's house. Courtney was last seen just after 11 p.m. in the vicinity of Highway 93 and Woodlawn Avenue on the outskirts of Estevan, Saskatchewan. Now, I'm going to be honest, going on to Google Maps, I couldn't for the life of me figure out where Woodlawn Avenue intersected with Highway 39, because as you can see from the map, they don't. The only Woodlawn Avenue in Estevan is a Woodlawn Avenue South, which only runs between Highway 18 to Alice Road with some side roads branching from it. Highway 39 runs north around the city. So I did some digging because I needed this to make sense, and I wanted to make sure that the information I was providing to you is correct. In a map from Estevan City website, it depicts the town just 5 years ago in 2020, and it shows Highway 39 running through the town to connect to both Highway 47 and Highway 18, which is fine. But what's interesting to me is that Woodlawn Avenue and Woodlawn Avenue South don't really seem to exist. Instead, a road called Collins Road is in its place. After some digging, I ended up discovering a map from 2017, which does show Woodlawn Avenue existing and intersecting with Highway 39, then transitioning to Woodlawn Avenue South, meaning this entire stretch of broken road here once upon a time was Woodlawn Avenue. So if I'm correct, Courtney was last seen in this area, which would now be Sister Roddy Road and Highway 39. As you can see, this area is quite rural with a train track and gas station near the intersection.
Took me the next day. I don't know about everybody else. Everyone thought she probably just ran away, but I don't know. I had that gut feeling, like I said, something wasn't right. I felt it. Call me stupid or crazy. I don't know if that's your problem, but that's the way it is. But I felt it.
And much like Sandra Ruzick, she had said that like she had felt the moment her daughter passed. So some parents have that intuition.
I never had that one. I just knew something was very wrong. I didn't know what it was. I just had that feeling that something was very wrong, something out of the ordinary.
And then you ended up driving to Kendra's, right, to check on her, or see if she was
Pretty
where
much,
she was
yeah.
supposed to. Yeah.
When she didn't get by dinner time, and then like I went down there in the morning, like around dinner roughly, and they weren't there. So I went down there at supper, and then when I talked to Kendra and her mom directly, then I knew like something hit right then and there. Just like, okay, something's not right, because this isn't Courtney's MO for running away or this or that, or because none of her friends really know either. Or they weren't telling me, but I had a bad feeling, like something deep down inside said, no, this isn't right.
At first, it was the Estevan Police Service that was handling Courtney's disappearance. And at first, they just considered the strange disappearance of a 13-year-old girl as a runaway case. Now, unfortunately, Courtney did seem to have some sort of history with running away from home. However, I only seen one specific instance mentioned in newspaper articles of when she had ran away from home in the past. One. And in this instance, it was said that she had been angry because she wasn't allowed to go out, so she ran away, and it was in Estevan that this happened. But the difference was, this time she had been allowed to go out, it seems. She went over to a friend's house to watch a movie, and it was on her way back home that she disappeared. Plus this time, none of her belongings had went missing, meaning she didn't have any of them on her, as well as her debit card and her health card were never used after this. Her grandmother, whose name is Marlene Struble, would press that it was very unlike Courtney to disappear or go somewhere without at least packing some clothing with her. saying, quote, "It's very disturbing. It's just like she disappeared off the face of the earth. She was supposedly going to visit a girlfriend, but she just left her purse, her clothes, her jewelry behind. That's not like her. She never went anywhere without packing her things." End quote. And again, she left her friend's home with the destination allegedly to go back to her father's home. So why would she just run away on the way back home with no money, no clothing, no means to? Again, I do not believe children, especially teens as well, just disappear off the face of the earth because they ran away, because most of them don't have the means to like an adult would. Young teens and children don't have, a vehicle to drive them somewhere unless they have money on them to maybe catch a train, or they're hitchhiking to get somewhere, which then again, that's even more high risk. So then police should be looking into that again as like a kidnapping, because someone's taking a child somewhere without the parents' permission. There's just so much wrong to me with police considering children and teens as runaways. 100%, I agree. There probably are ones out there who do run away, who are involved maybe with crime, who just have this history of, being delinquent juveniles. There definitely is. But even if they are runaways, they still need to be found because they're at a high risk of something bad happening to them. Again, they're underage, they're children. They shouldn't be just, considered runaways and then police don't look into them as seriously as any other child that goes missing. It makes zero sense to me. And again, they don't have the means to disappear usually. It's not like they can just go rent an apartment somewhere and just go start a life somewhere else. It's ridiculous. If anything, they're at a greater risk than to be kidnapped, to be trafficked, for horrible, horrible things to happen to them. So they need to be found. Now, in a strange crossover from another case that we've covered recently, Lorena Keepness, the mother of 5-year-old Tamara Keepness, who disappeared in Regina, will publicly say her heart went out to Courtney's family. She was surprised to hear about the disappearance of yet another girl and made arrangements to speak with Courtney's grandmother. Courtney's disappearance was said to really strike Lorena because Courtney disappeared just 4 days after Tamara disappeared. When it comes to the initial investigation into Courtney's disappearance, from all of the newspaper articles I read and just articles I read in general and talk on this case, it doesn't seem like police really did that much. Now, let me know if I'm wrong, but it really doesn't seem like they did too much. It seems like they may have contacted family and some friends, and they visited places where Courtney liked to hang out. And it wouldn't be until some time passed and there was no signs of Courtney, she never turned back up, that police would begin to chase down tips and alleged sightings of her. As Christmas approached with no signs of Courtney returning home, her family decided not to get gifts for her. Her mother Joy saying, quote, "We've gone through the whole presents thing. It's hard to think that if we did buy gifts and wrapped them and she didn't come home, they'd still be sitting there waiting. It would be a blatant reminder that she's gone." End quote. A year would pass with absolutely no answers. And at the beginning of 2005, a ground search would be conducted in Estevan. Despite months of alleged investigation, media coverage, poster distribution, and an offer of a $10,000 reward, no one seemed to be coming forward and no one seemed to be any closer to finding this young teen. There was media coverage, though. There were quite a lot of articles from back then of Courtney's case and her disappearance, and tips would come in, including sightings of her in places like Alberta or British Columbia, but none of them could be confirmed, meaning there had been no substantiated sightings of Courtney other than the last day she was seen by that intersection. A representative from the Missing Children Society of Canada would say, quote, "Whenever we do an investigation, we start off by working with the local police to look at interviews and see what they've done. We look at anything else that we would do. In this case, we went to the next logical step, which was to start searching the area. We started in one particular area. The case certainly, to our eyes, has not come to any conclusion. It is still an active case. Courtney's investigation is a difficult one because there was a widespread view in Estevan that she ran away. Teenage girls get annoyed. They take off, whatever, but they normally come home. They certainly take stuff with them, especially girls. None of that happened. So we have reasons to be alarmed when someone that young has disappeared. Girls that age have tight networks of friends, and it seems to be unreasonable for someone to disappear without a trace or taking their belongings." End quote. Courtney's family seems to also go down that same avenue that I go down with this, in that she was either abducted or there was some kind of foul play involved here. Another strange thing I also found was that in some of the early articles written on her disappearance, it states that Courtney resurfaced briefly in Estevan a few days after she disappeared, but then there was no confirmed contact. So what does that mean? Because none of that is written in any of the newer articles or newest reporting on this case. Was this just misinformation at the time, or did she actually resurface after she was last seen at that intersection on Woodlawn and Highway 39? And then she disappeared after that. And if she did resurface, who seen her and where was she? And then how did she disappear again? Or was this just rumor at the time that people were claiming to have spotted her places, but then that was just ruled out, which is why it's not current information anymore? Another thing I'm confused about, let me know down below, what is the correct version of this? But in current articles, it's stating that Courtney disappeared on her way back home to her father's house after watching movies with her friend. She went to the house, she was watching movies there, and was walking home when she disappeared and was last seen at that intersection at Woodlawn and Highway 39. However, in some of the early articles, it's stating as if she disappeared while walking to her friend's house, as if she never made it there because she left her father's to go watch these movies, but they didn't make it there. So I'm really confused by that as well. I don't know if this is just a misunderstanding of the case at the time, and now decades later, the information has kind of been sorted out and the timeline and the stories have been sorted out. And so that's why I told it to you the way I did, because that seems to be the current reporting of it, that especially from police sources. And then there's also a lot of different stated time periods, where in the early articles, it stated that she left her friend's home at 11:30 to midnight, whereas there are other sources that state she left the home around 11 p.m. So there's a lot of confusion with the timeline as well, of just what time things were happening, when things were happening, and what exactly took place. Which is strange for a case that seems to have gotten so much attention at the time. Usually these details are really hammered out when cases are, widely reported on. They seem to have just gotten more confusing as time went on. At that time, her father Mark was said to devote all of his time searching for his daughter, walking the streets at night looking for her. In 2008, a caseworker for Child Find Saskatchewan would receive a tip that Courtney was spotted outside of the province. This tip was forwarded to the Estevan Police Services, however, nothing was said to have come of it. It wouldn't be until 8 years after Courtney disappeared in 2012 that the Saskatchewan RCMP would take over her case. And that is when they would finally come to the conclusion that she was not a runaway and that there was most likely foul play involved here. It took 8 years for the authorities to finally investigate this 13-year-old girl's disappearance as a homicide investigation. 8 years for this child's disappearance to be taken seriously, in my opinion. They'd even take to the news saying, quote, Saskatchewan RCMP would like to encourage anyone out there who may have information regarding Courtney's whereabouts that it is never too late to come forward with it. No matter how much time has passed or how small the information may seem, it could be the pieces that put it all together. We do not give up on missing people, and the Historical Case Unit will continue to investigate any new information received until Courtney is located. End quote.
You always wonder all the time.
For Joy Struble, it's not just a 6-year-old missing person case, it's 2,190 days without her daughter. 13-year-old Courtney Struble went missing in July 2004. She went to a friend's house to watch a movie and never came home. Struble would now be 19 years old. Now, the Estevan police have asked RCMP to reopen the case.
They've gone over the material from Estevan police, and it's a fresh set of eyes to look at this investigation and to follow up on those leads as they come in, interview people, re-interview people, that type of thing.
A fresh set of eyes and a glimmer of hope in the 6-year-old case. Her mother says they'll welcome any information on the disappearance of her daughter, Courtney Struble, whether it means she's found alive or dead.
She knew that she could come to any of us at any time. If it happens that is the end result, then we're willing to do that, but we need to know. It's been a long time, and we just need a conclusion to begin the rest of our lives.
The RCMP Historical Case Unit will take over the file, and if anyone has any information, they're encouraged to call RCMP, Estevan Police, or Crime Stoppers. The RCMP says it's received many tips over the past few years and will investigate all new ones. Struble's family hopes that might lead them to her, or at least to find out what happened.
But after 8 years, what kind of crack to this case are they expecting? Now, historical cases are solved all the time. That is true. However, the first 48 hours are the most important. The first few hours after a child disappears or anyone disappears are the most critical, but most importantly for a child. That's when if a predator has taken a child, that they're going to do what they want to do and get out of this kidnapping. And then they're most likely going to do away with the child so that the child doesn't speak, doesn't rat them out, and so they're not caught. Now, of course, better late than never. But in my opinion, 8 years is a little too long and a little too late to have taken this case seriously. And that makes me angry that this girl was failed, that she was just thought of as a runaway. If she was kidnapped or if she was murdered, that evidence is most likely long gone, especially now when it's been 20 years. I would really, really love to see the case notes for this case because I am very curious when police actually went and searched the area where she was last seen. Did they go in there with a fine-tooth comb at that intersection and look for any strange tire marks? Did they look for anything that might have been dropped? Did they look for any DNA evidence? Did they go look at any security cameras? Because 2004, it's possible that there was security cameras at that gas station if it existed in 2004. Because on Google, I can't go back to 2004, but I can go to around 2009, I think it was. So it may not have existed then, but if it did, was there security cameras on there that could have captured something? But then if police didn't take this seriously and didn't look into that stuff, the footage is long gone now, obviously. It would have also been long gone in 2012. Was there any potential witnesses in the area? Because if there was a gas station there, which someone let me know if there was, there may have been people stopping to get gas, even at that time of night. Even though this is a smaller city and it was late at night, she was last allegedly seen at that intersection. Now, I'm wondering who reported last seeing her at that intersection. Was it someone possibly at a gas station nearby there or that was driving by on the highway? I've never seen revealed who this tip came from, who this witness was that last seen her at that intersection. Clearly someone did for us to know that that was the last place she was seen, unless that information just comes from the friend's house she was at and that's where they thought she was walking, like the direction she was walking, because that's the way she would have walked home. Again, that's information we don't really know.
The RCMP also believe that someone knows something.
We're missing those pieces of that puzzle, and we haven't found her yet, and 15 years is a long time. And how we're going to get those pieces, I don't know, other than the person who knows what's going on. Even if they don't know what's relevant to them, if they come forward to us, we know where that piece maybe lies in that puzzle, and it can push forward an investigation. Sometimes all it takes is one phone call, and it can change the whole scope of an investigation.
The case remains alive with the RCMP Historical Case Unit. Nicole Burkholder grew up with her and has spent half of her life without closure. At times, she can't help but fear the worst.
It's one of those things where you don't want to think of something like that because it's just hard to think of her gone. But, it's just like within 15 years, you kind of have to, you hold on to hope, but at the same time, you almost have to mourn that person.
It's said that in the 20 years since Courtney disappeared, dozens of investigators have worked her case, conducting hundreds of interviews, and her case is still being overseen by the Saskatchewan RCMP Historical Unit. A radio host named Lyle McGillivray, who interviewed Courtney's mother Joy in the days after her disappearance, would say, quote, "It was probably one of the toughest interviews I've done, simply because she came right into the building to do it. It's hard to sit across from a parent and not have any help for them in a situation like that. It's hard to believe that those 20 years have passed and there's no closure. That's the hard part for me, is that the family members, they've never had that closure. Anytime you see a story like this elsewhere in the world, because it happens all the time, it doesn't have the impact it does when it's right here in your own backyard." End quote. Joy herself would also say, quote, "It's been said to me many times that time heals all wounds. That's a lie. It doesn't. She is loved, missed, and thought of every day by all who love her. We are of the opinion that people do not disappear and that someone knows where she is." End quote. Courtney's case is a strange one to me because what are the chances that she would have hitchhiked that night after being offered a ride home from someone she knew and declining that? Now, obviously, I don't know her, but just looking at the circumstances, it just doesn't really make sense that she would. If she was going to want to drive home, she would have taken that ride, opposed to getting into someone who she didn't know. What is concerning to me is that she was allegedly last seen near Highway 39. And if she was to get into a vehicle there or be forced into a vehicle there, this highway could directly take her to the US border or towards Highway 1, which is also known as the Trans-Canada Highway or the Highway of Tears. Again, I'm really, really curious what information police have on this case. I would pay a lot of money, honestly, to be given the files that they have and to see all of the information that I have and to just sit here with a cup of coffee and to just go over it line by line with you all. They have to know more than they're saying. There has to be something more to this case. And if they don't, if they truly don't have anything, that just, it makes me sick. It makes me sick to think that this 13-year-old girl was most likely kidnapped then, or some kind of foul play happened to her, and that she could have been out there somewhere hoping that someone was looking for her and going to find her. And meanwhile, police weren't. Police were just considering her a runaway. She could have been sitting there in agony, hoping to be found. And that just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that, of course, family was concerned, but she wasn't being looked into like, a normal missing child. That it would take 8 years for police to really look at her disappearance and say, hey, something bad probably happened here. And yes, it looks like some kind of investigation did happen, but they weren't looking at it, again, like a normal missing child case where, roads might have been closed to try to stop her abductor, if there was one. There was no sort of Amber Alert put out, which obviously I don't think her case would qualify for one either way, but just some version of it would have been nice. As far as the public knows, there is zero evidence as to what happened to Courtney and where she is. And considering where she was staying at her father's, it is quite close to the US border. So if she was kidnapped, her kidnapper could have taken her into the US some way, somehow back then, and she could have been hundreds of kilometers away in a completely different country before anyone even knew it. And that is absolutely terrifying. I know we don't often like to go down the roads of, specifics of what may have happened to someone when they disappear. But in this girl's case, we hear tons and tons of stories of young girls being kidnapped and being held for years and then finally escaping. It's possible that she could still be out there somewhere. It's possible that she could have been taken somewhere like the US or just somewhere in Canada and held somewhere for a period of time, again, hoping that she was found when police weren't looking at it like that. Or, as most cases seem to go with kidnapped children, she could have been murdered. And again, police are looking at her disappearance as a homicide. It also makes me wonder, though, if there is more that police know, if there could have been someone in the town that was a PDF file or had bad intentions. And because Canada doesn't have a database for that kind of thing, we may not know, but police may know that there was someone in town with bad intentions that doesn't have a good alibi, but they're just not saying that, and they could have done something to her. Or maybe it's closer to home or someone she knew, and there's different circumstances here we don't know about. I never want to accuse family or friends or anything like that. But again, with such little information, it's so impossible to say what happened to this girl. It makes me wonder if police think this is a homicide now because certain stories don't line up when they go back and look at them. Where's the information come from that she was last seen at that intersection? And why is there so much conflicting information from early on in the reporting on her case to now, where there's stories about her being seen after her disappearance in the town and then disappearing, and the confusion of stories of her disappearing on the way to her friends, but then disappearing on the way home from her friends? What is the truth? And what happened to this young girl? Courtney deserves justice. And her family deserves answers. This is one that definitely needs to get spread out there, and there needs to be more coverage on this. Yes, there is coverage on it. I've seen, people over the years covering it on YouTube, but I never heard of it until someone recommended it to me. So clearly it's not getting spread enough. Just like the many, many cases we talk about on here that don't get enough coverage and don't get talked about enough. Someone out there knows something and they're just not speaking. And they've gotten away with it for decades now. But I'm truly hoping that police are actually taking this seriously now, and that they will get answers for this young girl. Let's take one more good look at Courtney, because she may be out there somewhere right now to this day, or she may not. But either way, this might spark someone's memory. At the time, Courtney was 13 years old and described as a white female with an olive complexion, standing 5'3" tall and a medium build with light brown hair and hazel eyes. Most importantly, she has a birthmark on the nape of her neck and a 1.5-inch scar on her left shin. These are identifying marks to look out for. If you have any information as to what happened to Courtney, please contact the authorities. I'll have the information down below. This family deserves answers after all of this time. Please go show them support. Please share out Courtney's missing persons flyer. Get her name, get her face out there, because even if her disappearance wasn't taken seriously then, it is now. And we need to continue to support this case and spread the word out there, because Courtney deserves it. My heart goes out to this family. I truly hope that you get answers. And as always, I hope you stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video.